And just to start things off a little bit, just like to hear a little bit about yourself and what you do here, and just kind of an overview of some of the good work that you do here at the Hospitality House.
So I, Todd Carter, the Chief Development Director. I've been here since 2011, and we have grown exponentially. We have changed exponentially. The history of the organization is that we were started by the Boone Coalition of Churches, loosely. They were an organization back in the late 70s and 80s, and they got together to try to do something about the issue of homelessness that was appearing after the Vietnam War. So they, in 1984, they opened Hospitality House of Northwest North Carolina as an official nonprofit after someone donated a house, or donated money to buy a house, 302 West King Street. That's now where King Street Flats is. So the
Where King Street Flats is, that Wheeling House apartment complex.
Yes.
So it used to be the first.
That was the first hospitality house until, and it operated as a shelter. There was eventually a rock house behind it was purchased, and that's where family housing was. And then where a whole lot of donuts, Ambrosia Arcade, whatever it's going to become, that used to be a dumpy old building that was a dentist office and a Pizza Hut delivery place. Hospitality House bought that as well and used that for the first transitional housing program. 2011 is when I started here, 6 months after they moved into the Brook Hollow Complex building. Now we have the Watauga Housing and Outreach Center, which I'm sitting in. We have a Wilkes Housing and Outreach Center. We have 2 group homes and 15 other properties that we operate across 7 counties.
And those counties are
Allegheny, Ashe, Wilkes, Watauga, Mitchell, Avery, Yancey.
So it seems, which I didn't realize, that this program had started with, I guess, trying to address the need of Vietnam veteran homelessness to begin with. And you said that started in 1984?
The organization was officially given its 501c3 license by the IRS in 1984. But if you look at homelessness in our nation, it really started in the 70s after the Vietnam War. Like, you go back and talk to, my dad, grandparents, everybody had like the hobo that came through the town, or the seasonal worker that hopped the trains. That was all real stuff. But homelessness did not become an issue until the Vietnam War, and veterans were coming back, and it was our first chemical war, and it was different than the veterans that came back. Yes, veterans came back from World War I, World War II, high rates of alcoholism, but this was a different level. I believe back then it was suffered from shock, something, but this was before there was a diagnosis of PTSD. They were just expected these soldiers to get a job. You're back. Get a job.
Come back and transition into normal society.
Not understanding Agent Orange, not understanding. So there was all these, and that's why the version of homelessness has always kind of been this scruffy guy. Then there was a huge bump in homelessness again in the 80s with the Reagan administration, when they closed all the federal institutions. That were supposed to transition to a state solution. The money never came for the state solution. So then you had veterans and people with severe mental illness. So those are the first 2 waves of homelessness in our country. Then you get to the financial crisis in the mid-2000s. The first significant wave of family homelessness happened.
So when you're looking at homelessness, you're not solely looking at one of those issues, but it's, I guess, often a combination of those factors. When you're looking at veterans returning home from war, looking at the mental health problems that are endemic in the culture, and then also some of the economic
challenges.
And so would you say here at the Hospitality House, that's pretty much what you see is a combination of those 3?
Oh, and I will add now, this 4th wave looks different. It's older. It's elderly people, and kind of in the middle across the spectrum, you have adolescents. So while we don't have a specific youth shelter, we do serve a lot of children, and we serve a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds because North Carolina has one of, if not the worst foster care crises in the nation. So at one time, the per capita number of foster parents versus the number of children in foster care, we were number one in the country for that being out of balance.
Really?
So when kids in foster care and group homes turn 18, they get $220, and then they're just like, go make a life. And so if they don't have family supports or resources, so I mean, the entire time I've been here, 14 years, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing a slowdown in that, and we're seeing a dramatic increase of about 30% in elderly homelessness, because the baby boomers, the biggest generation of our lifetime, of any lifetime, they're all aging out. The financial issues of you have to have two incomes to make it in this country. If one of them, I'm thinking about like 12 people in my head right now that are living down there, that husband died, she ignored the mortgage, celebrated her 76th birthday here. 84-year-old lady fleeing domestic violence. And that's only going to get worse. So we're preparing, we're connected a lot more to, we're doing the Yancey County Senior Resource Fair. We're connected to all the adult services programs of DSS. We're connected to High Country Area on Aging, doing cross trainings with their staff and our staff, because in my 14 years, you see a lot of differences.
And I can imagine, too, with the older population, especially the retirees, or I guess really people who are on fixed income, if they're receiving Social Security, one of the things I've heard a lot when I go out and talk to people in those situations is that they continue to see things get more and more expensive. We're just having those kind of economic challenges, and obviously the Social Security payments they receive aren't changing in response to that. And so I think, and maybe in some senses, they get priced out of, I guess, the cost of living or what they're receiving when they were first got on their retirement benefits or on, I guess, male Social Security mainly. But I guess what you're saying is that you're also seeing that where they face other economic challenges or just things that happen in their lives that would force them into a situation where they're trying to receive help for housing specifically.
Yeah, so if you're both living on Social Security checks, one of you dies, you can't make the mortgage.
I guess it effectively splits your income in half.
Right.
Okay.
And so more and more seniors are going on food assistance. More and more seniors are having to make tough decisions, living in cars until they can get services. It's you got to think about it. Because here's the thing: 80% of people are only homeless one time in your life, across the board, once. Now, imagine if that time happens and you're 69 years old. You've never had to think about this before. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to turn. You've never looked for any of these things. Filling out a food stamp application, it's 4 pages long. It's insane. And then you factor in a lot of, particularly where we are in rural Appalachia, that a lot of people have never, they've never had to deal with anything like this, and whether it's the land, the amount of people we encounter to this day that can't read is astonishing. Really? So they can't even read an application. So that's why our service coordinators, it's so important that we walk beside people.
And your service coordinators, these are the people that kind of know the language, the lingo of the different kind of assistance programs that are out there that are available to help people in these situations.
Yes, and what's interesting, when I started here in 2011, we had 14 staff members. Now we have 15 housing programs. we have more housing programs than we did staff members when I started.
Wow.
And the important thing to remember, and kind of what makes us unique, is that we have those 15 housing programs. We actually only have one shelter program.
Mm-hmm.
So we're no longer the little shelter on King Street. We're an agency that crosses 25 to 2,600 square miles. And we have tailor-made programs for housing programs. And it's not that our service coordinators know everything. They know how to navigate the system. The important thing about our service coordinators is we meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. So whether that's a lady that came in, she needed 4 months to save up her money. We worked to find her housing. And she was in and out of here. It's the lady that we've been working with that finally got her disability. She's now eligible to move into our permanent supportive housing program, and she's someone that will need us to be beside her for the rest of her life. Mm. So we have varying degrees of our programs where we get money from different avenues, whether that's family housing, whether that's domestic violence. We have 2 domestic violence programs, a family program, transitional housing program, permanent supportive housing program, and scattered site housing. And those are people living with a disabling condition that some of them will eventually move on. Some of them,
That's fine.
And some of them will stay with us until they enter hospice care.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's a mix of people who come through once, more or less. They're pretty resilient people. They're going to go on and be fine. But then you're saying also you have a percentage that comes in, and you're going to get to know these people quite well, essentially through the rest of their life.
Well, and looking at, so if someone enters permanent supportive housing, they're no longer homeless. Mm-hmm. They're housed, and so still that ratio of the average person is only homeless once in their life, mm-hmm. and we want that to be true.
Okay. So I guess kind of what you're getting at through the explanation of going back to the 80s and looking at the different societal factors that have led to increased homelessness. Essentially, the organization has had to respond to that over the years and decades.
Correct.
And so what does that increase look like? And I guess when you're looking at the issue today, and we'll get to Hurricane Helene a little bit later on, but what is the scope of the problem as it exists right now in the 7-county region?
A couple of different things. So back in I believe it was 2010 is when HUD started the Housing First model. Mm-hmm. And they said, we think this might work. We're going to first try it with veterans.
Okay.
Astronomical decreases in veteran homelessness. There are states and cities in this country that no longer have any homeless veterans because Housing First works. And what Housing First means is you get people housed, you surround them with their supportive services they need, you get them what they need, they're going to be more stable. The old way used to be you have to be perfect. You can't be on drugs. You have to have a good credit score. Imagine that. I have to have a good credit score being homeless to get a place.
I don't have a good credit score.
And so you have to be completely sober. You have to be this. You have to be on your medication. You have to be a perfect human. So it was a stair step. Mm. You would enter here. If you're a good boy or girl, you can make it up to here. And then if you're up to here, we can probably find you housing. When we shifted from that as an agency, our numbers of people housed skyrocketed. This past year is the best year ever. We moved 247 people out of homelessness in 1 year.
Just in the past year? Right?
Just 2024.
2024,
yeah.
Okay.
Using that model. Mm-hmm. 30% of those were children.
Okay.
So that kind of tells you... a huge chunk of those were also, I don't know the exact percentage, were also over 55. Mm-hmm. So moving and adapting with the different models and knowing what works and having the data to back it up is what's, we know it works, but being able to show the numbers that, hey, look, this is working.
Okay. Yeah, the child aspect of that whole thing really kind of shocks me, but as I think about it a little bit more, I don't think it's ultimately surprising because I used to work at the paper over in Avery County. Spam called her, interrupting her interview. When I used to work over in Avery County, one of the first articles I did with them was about the children's home, which is now part of Leeds McRae College. But when I went over there and talked with them, they kind of gave me the history of the foster care system in the state, and it reiterates a lot of what you're saying. Where used to, you could be, I guess, orphaned or whatnot, and you would be able to go into a house like that where you had, people taking care of you. You were in there with other kids. It was kind of like I want to call it traditional setup that you usually see like in movies or whatnot from back in the day. But they said that eventually the state began to go away from that model and really centered on a foster care approach first model. And I think what you were saying is that there's more children in the system than there are foster care families available.
Per capita, the ratio is way off.
So because that gap exists, essentially organizations like Hospitality House are the ones that are kind of left.
We pick them up when they're 18.
Okay. When they're 18?
Yeah, when they age out of foster care.
Okay.
So, because if we ran our youth services program, but we do not have a youth services program where most of the children that we deal with are in families.
Okay.
So a lot of the kids are in our DV program with their parent.
Okay.
Domestic violence program, yeah.
Which I think like some states like California have expanded that range to, I think if you're like 20, 21, then maybe you can continue in the foster care system out there, but I guess obviously North Carolina it's 18
yes.
and then you kind of have to fend for yourself.
Right.
Okay.
But some states have expanded that, and I mean, I tell you stories. I got lots of stories. I've got we had a mom and her 15-year-old, and she was just like 35, died suddenly. Grandparents were like, well, we ain't taking him. And so for a temporary time, they were like, okay, you guys are the guardian. And we're like, okay. So we took care of him. And then we finally convinced the grandparents, like, you're the only living relative, and we really don't want him to go into the system.
Yeah.
We please. And it took us a while, but we looked out after him, made sure he got to school. And
but you essentially had to convince the grandparents to step up and take in the kids.
And then I've had many elderly folks where their kids were stealing their Social Security checks, and two different extremes. One, we were alerted, I want to say Yancey County, by law enforcement that an elderly lady was living in a shed with an extension cord going out and after going to the bathroom in a bucket. And her daughter was taking her Social Security checks. And then we had another lady, she stood up for herself and said, I'm not giving my checks to you anymore. So her daughter drove her and dropped her off in the parking lot. At least she gave her a ride.
Yeah.
So, and in my life, I never thought I would see an 84-year-old lady fleeing domestic violence. So, and the flip side of that, we have an 18-year-old that is he is in Washington State doing Job Corps. He's excelling so much so that he's doing culinary arts outside of Seattle. He's doing so well. I just heard from his mom that they're thinking of transferring him to San Diego for advanced culinary arts to be a chef, like a upscale chef. So, so there's a ton of victories here, man. There's a ton of victories. You got to take those tough situations, and that's our job, is to walk people to their personal victory. And when I'm talking to a class, a lot of times I talk about there's this big, continues to be this big misnomer in our society that homeless people just need to get a job. No. So when in 2011, again, when I first started, I knew every person that was living in our emergency housing programs that had a mental health diagnosis. I knew them by first and last name, and they could fit on two hands. 50% of the people that lived at our Brookhollow complex back then had jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they were part-time jobs or jobs with no benefits, paid $7.25, $7.50 an hour, couldn't afford a place to live. Now, the number of people that we, on average, that we serve that have a significant, serious mental health diagnosis is almost 70%.
Okay.
And
so did I go up from 50 to 70? Or
no, that went up from like 10 people. So that would be, like, I'm bad at math, but that would be like 10%.
Okay, much smaller percentage to almost
to 70%.
Yeah.
And there are a number of people that would be able to hold a job,
mm-hmm.
either because they have a chronic health condition, they have a mental health issue, or they shouldn't be working because they're old.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we have so much medical equipment in our building now that we never used to have. So that 50% of the people that used to be able to, that had jobs when they lived there, about 15% of the people that are currently with us would be able to hold a job.
Mm. So it goes way beyond just the economic thing of just needing a job, having income come in, because there's so many other factors that play into it.
I didn't, back in the, 2008s to 2014s,
yeah.
economics was a bigger factor because of the recession.
Right.
Now, the continued deterioration of our mental health care system and our healthcare system
mm-hmm.
is the number one driver of homelessness right now.
Yeah, because I know, there's the behavioral health hospital in the next county over, and I know, talking to folks over there is a situation where people come in, they can only be there for like a week, like 2 weeks. They're not there long term.
Like Cannon?
But, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they come in, a lot of times they get the medication they need, but then you're just sitting right back on the street or wherever, I guess, the people can find housing or go back to their families or whatnot. But I know that if they have a situation where they're not able to get those medications and they go through a crisis or they have an episode, they go right back in as a cycle that repeats itself.
And currently, they don't have enough staff to even have the beds full.
Yeah.
So we were here when Watauga Medical Center stopped doing any psychiatric care at all.
Okay.
So
Do you know how long ago that was?
Oh boy, that was, man, everything's so COVID foggy now. It was pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
Let's just leave it at that because I don't want to get it wrong. And it was the same time that Cannon was they were going to expand more beds, but they said, all psychiatric issues, mental health issues have to go to Linville, have to go to Avery County. Mm-hmm. And there was this whole big, our ambulances aren't going to, whatever. So at that time, when they were trying to transition Cannon, and the only mental health beds in our 7-county region were at Hospitality House, and we're not a mental health facility.
Right. But again, it's a situation where there's a gap in care or there's a gap in people providing essential services like that, and it's up to these kind of places to fill that in where they can.
I will tell you, I'll just be brutally honest, that you say fill in the gap, and I tell people all the time, we swim in the gray, we are jumping the gap all the time. Mm-hmm. The mechanisms around us, and this is why it's kind of easy for me to understand the failure of the system. I look at the systems in our country have continued to fail people in poverty and people experiencing homelessness, children without food. There was a time in our country, back in the Nixon administration, that we almost eradicated poverty in America. And there's a great YouTube video about it. And the nation was aghast that there were 100,000 people in America experiencing poverty. So there's this whole push. I encourage you to go look at the videos on YouTube. The CBS did a massive special about it. Mm-hmm. And they got it down to like a few thousand people in America. That number today is 56 million are food insecure. And it was like, we can't let people in this country go hungry. Interestingly enough, back in the Great Depression, the same thing was said about housing. So people were hungry, but they said, oh no, we got to build houses for people. Mm-hmm. So there were very few homeless people. You would think, oh, that was the first wave of homelessness. No. America was like, people have to have a place to live. People have to have a house. So while everyone was struggling with food and trade and jobs, and very few people were actually homeless during the Great Depression, because America said, you're not living in this country without a place to live. Everyone deserves a place to live.
Yeah. Well, during
we're
that,
so far from that now.
Yeah. Well, during that time period, that's when a lot of these federal programs were instituted in the first place.
Yes, FDR instituted them with the New Deal to help bring people, and he, like, one of the greatest things, he put people to work for the government, building works projects. So all the beautiful stone buildings we see around here, that was the government putting people to work. Say, we can pay you. Cove Creek School, the Viaduct Bridge.
Any of those stone houses you see around here, just marvelous architecture.
The WPA, Work Project Administration. Yeah. So it's the mindset is so different now that it's really, really challenging.
Yeah. If you want to go ahead and restart that camera, hit it once. And then hit it again and make sure you see the little timer above the top.
There we go. Good to go.
I also want to make sure that Todd is in focus and he's not blurry like Bigfoot.
Yeah, looking good.
So it's all right?
Blurry like Bigfoot, yeah.
All right. So going back to Hospitality House, when we're seeing this increase in need in the community, just from an organizational perspective, how does Hospitality House look at that? Is it more of looking at the numbers and saying that we need to respond to what is there, or is it more of receiving clients first and then responding in that way? Like, is there a set goal that y'all look at with trying to get people?
That's a great question, because we only look at the numbers after the fact.
After the fact.
We look at the people.
Yeah.
That's our number one goal, is wherever you are, we're going to meet you. Yeah. And we're going to help you determine what your personal victory is. For some people, like this lady, it's on getting on disability, getting a housing voucher, let's help her get housed. For some people, it's like, stay here, help me save up my money. Like, we operate our own bank, basically, so people that can't get a bank account, we do a savings account for them in our own safe, so they can save up here. So it's definitely, we're people-driven, 100%. The increases. Yeah. So we as an agency, we as a region, we as a state, we as a country have made significant progress until COVID. Every single gain across the board, doesn't matter what data you look at, our data, state data, national data,
HUD data,
everything was wiped out by COVID. And then we're just coming out of that, and our region was hit by the hurricane. Yeah. So there are so many people experiencing homelessness for the very first time, and along with that, COVID did a number on people's mental health. Everything became more difficult.
Okay. So I could kind of see the timeline from when you started in 2011. I guess a lot of people at that point in time were still recovering from the economic collapse that happened in 2008. And over that next decade, like you were saying, to start to see gradual improvements until the next crisis comes, and it's COVID. It's the hurricane here, just it's a double whammy in just a span of less than 5 years. So so I guess you could probably say that as y'all continue to work from those point in times onward, that you can continue to help more and more people, and hopefully the situation will maybe improve in that same way.
Well, and back to the gap question, it's so hard to get resources for your agency and for was speak to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So it's ridiculous. So one of our long-term staff members, who's the lead permanent supported housing coordinator, he's getting his master's in clinical mental health therapy. So we're moving him to be our third therapist. Okay. We're doing it ourselves. We had 19 acres donated to us in Wilkes County. We're building our own housing. If we can't get it from other sources, we're just having to do it. Mm-hmm. So when Hurricane Helene happened, we were already supposed to be digging and planting the 19 acres. Hurricane Helene has thrown everything off, just like COVID did. But we have a housing crisis, massive, that just got a lot worse. So we're going to build our own housing, and trying to find someone even that has a housing voucher that is handicapped, a unit, impossible. They don't exist. So we've got people staying in our emergency housing program for 1 year, 2 years. Our goal is to get people moved out in 90 to 120 days.
Yeah. Hence the emergency
right.
term. Yeah.
But there's nowhere for them to go. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay. So I like what you said earlier about when you're looking at the scope of the problem, not saying, like, hey, we're going to help this many people, or we have maybe even the resources to help this many people, but it's just much more so helping and dealing with the people who show up out the door
right.
on a day-to-day basis.
Or get referrals. I mean, so the opioid funding that came down from the state, from this Sacro Pharmaceuticals and Big Pharma and all that stuff. So how that's being distributed is from the federal government to the states. Any county that signed on, the county gets funding. So we are currently operating 3 programs: one Watauga Recovery House, one Watauga, one in Wilkes, one in Ash. And when we opened our Wilkes Housing and Outreach Center 2.5 years ago, there was a line out the door the first day of people needing assistance. The first year of our opioid use disorder housing, which, again, we take people with that money, we pay their rent, utilities, deposits for 2 to 3 months till they can either get additional income or go on a housing voucher or whatever that looks like to get them stable. We had hoped to house 15 people. We housed 66 in 34 households. 34 households of 66 people. And to this date, only one of them has returned to homelessness.
Wow.
That was our first year.
Okay.
So what we're doing works.
And do you think it's because you really take that approach where we're just going to treat everyone like an individual?
Absolutely.
And treat them like family, or just really build that relationship from the ground up?
Absolutely. That is the key. That's the secret sauce. Mm-hmm. Because this whole thing about, so if I ask a class, how do you define success? Everyone have a different answer, somewhat different answer. Ending homelessness isn't, here's the formula, ABC, 1, 2, 3, poof. Yeah. And that's the mindset of so many people. I call them bootstrappers. You just got to pull yourself by your bootstraps. You got to just do this and this and this, and it's all going to work out. Being able to look someone in the eye and say, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Who did this to you? Instead of, what have you done? How have you screwed up this time? How'd you get in this mess? So one of the big things that we pivoted towards in 2015-16 is we really dove in as a staff to understanding adverse childhood experiences and trauma. Yeah. And if there's one thread that I could string across homelessness, man, woman, and child, it would go back to trauma 99% of the time. And when we became that low barrier, harm reduction focused agency that was not trauma informed, we were trauma transformed. And being able to look at people and understand and talk to them, not as a homeless person, but as a person, right, completely changed the game.
Now, when someone is either referred to the hospitality house or shows up at the door, shows up at the shelter, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the process that they go through. When y'all get to know this person and, like you said, talking about getting down to the layers of the things that happened in their life that led them to that moment where they were seeking help. What is the process, or maybe even the pipeline that they would go through from getting into the service and the programs, the different programs that y'all offer, and then eventually getting them into housing or getting them into some sort of care or the kind of program like that?
Well, with 15 housing programs, there are 15 different answers.
15 different housing programs.
Yeah, so there are 15 different answers to that question. I was just looking at the data as I was putting together our 2024 annual summary. Mm-hmm. We moved 10 people into apartments that were living in their car or their tent.
Okay.
So it was our outreach team going out and sitting down with them. And like during the point in time, we discovered 3 couples each living in their car out in near Bethel.
Okay.
And many people will never come into quote-unquote shelter. Mm-hmm. So we worked with a DV client that it was dangerous for her and her children to be anywhere. So she continued to live in her car at Walmart while we found them an apartment. We would go back and we would meet. Okay, we're going to meet over here. We're going to meet in the parking lot at Stick Boy. Or, come over here. We're going to fill out your paperwork. We're going to do this. A lot of times for our opioid use folks, the referrals come from Homestead here, R3 in Wilkes.
Homestead Recovery.
Homestead Recovery.
Okay. So these are the
Recovery Revolution.
Okay.
Yes, Recovery Revolution in Wilkes. There's similar programs. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, they will refer people. Sometimes we're able to bring folks in. I think right now we have I don't know how long our list is for a waiting list for an emergency housing bed. Mm-hmm. But those are people our outreach team is working with. Okay. So let's say a typical intake, someone comes in, is referred, we have a bed for them. We have to do all the very dry paperwork. It's about this thick that HUD requires and takes about 45 minutes to an hour just to do an intake. So depending on the fragility of the person and the traumatic situation they're in, we may bring them in and we may wait a couple of days. And particularly if it's on the weekend. And that's for our emergency housing program. And then the service coordinators will meet with them periodically and just literally get to know them. Sometimes it's sitting down and having lunch with them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's, I have a doctor's appointment. I need to go get my MET meds. I've got to do this. It's all of that. It's going in day-to-day life and getting to know people. And our domestic violence wing is a little more complicated. They're at a separate wing and they're more protected. Mm-hmm. But it's going and with the parents and meeting their kids when they get off the school bus. It's those regular interactions. And it's always about, okay, let's understand your barriers. What do you want? Where would you like to live? And then
again, that personal aspect to it.
Yeah. Right. And it's amazing. We took the COVID money we got and we expanded our staff, and the results were like that. I mean, people will say, oh, money can't solve everything. Well, it sure shit solved a lot for us because we were able to bring our team up. Mm-hmm. We're able to staff. We're still not where we want to be. We would like to have 3 staff members per program.
Okay.
And I really feel like with us developing the 19 acres, I mean, it's going to be a minute before the housing crisis in Watauga County gets any better. I mean, right now, 80% of the people that we're housing were moving to Wilkes County.
Are moving to Wilkes County?
We have to. There's no other housing here. Okay. Watauga and Ash are priced out.
Yeah.
So we're, again, trying to solve the problem for ourselves. Mm-hmm. But it really, we've never had the funding to do an outreach coordinators before, and boy, oh boy, that has paid massive dividends in the number of people. We're housing people from a tent. That's amazing. So again, but going back to the model of the old model of, got to come into shelter, you got to wait for a bed. We
don't need to do all that.
Even the people that are night by night. So we open up night by night shelter, and then on extreme weather issues, anybody can come in. And even they get assigned a locker, so they don't have to carry their stuff around with them forever. Like the indignity of that. Yep. So our 7 core values, dignity is at the top. Yep. Everything that we do is supposed to be dignity in action and with the person. So it's like, how do we do this better? Instead of having people lug around a garbage bag, we're going to give you a locker and put your things in. You come back tomorrow night. Our emergency housing program operates completely different. Most shelters operate like, we open at 6, you come in, you leave. If you're in an emergency housing program, you get a bed and a locker, and that's your space until we find you a house to live in.
And between the night by night and the emergency housing shelter, are those 2 separate facilities entirely?
No, we do everything completely different than everybody else. So when the state came to visit us back in 2012, I just started, they said, you can't do it like this. You can't do it like this. They didn't understand rural at all. Because in cities, it's like, well, the men's shelter's over here, the women's shelter's over here, the DV shelter's over here, the youth shelter's over here. You can't do it like this. We're like, yes, we can, and we are, because guess what? Somebody can't just hop on a bus from Yancey County and get to the men's shelter. Somebody can't hop on a bus from Ashe County and get to the women's shelter. So we have emergency housing down there for men and women at our Brook Hollow complex. We have domestic violence. We have permanent supportive housing, which is for disabled adults, and we have night by night.
Okay. And
family. Sorry, that's the other one. Family housing.
And family?
Yeah.
And that's all at a central...
That's all at our Brook Hollow complex, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know last time we talked, we did talk a little bit about the difference between helping these populations in urban areas versus rural areas. And would you say that the main difference is that in rural areas is that you have things that are a bit more centralized to the region, whereas if you're, say, like in Charlotte or Raleigh, for example, things are maybe a bit more spread out in those
It's all about transportation.
Okay.
Boone, North Carolina is the only place that has a free bus. It's the only place in hell that has a bus. Everyone has a transit system, but you got to schedule, you got to pay, you got to, I mean, and still we see transit buses from every county in our parking lot every day. Either coming to the community care clinic, coming to Hunger Coalition, coming to us, coming to our food pantry. So it is a transportation. First and foremost, it is transportation related. You can hop on a bus in Raleigh and get to any of the services. Period.
Okay.
Same in Charlotte. Same in Greensboro. We don't have that up here. We are handicapped.
And now, you mentioned the programs that y'all have in-house with Hospitality House, but you also work with the different agencies outside of this one organization. I think y'all help deal with food insecurity, things related to the mental health stuff, and then also probably a few more outside of that. But what are some of the partners that y'all also work with to help the populations that you help with some of the additional resources that they might need?
Well, we're a Second Harvest Food Bank affiliate, and we have a couple of different food access programs that we operate. We operate a community kitchen, which in COVID, you learn things, and so now we have a hotel size or a hospital size Cambro on wheels, and we put meals out there. Anyone can come and get food any time of the day they want to.
Okay.
So we feed a lot of people, and since Hurricane Helene, we have gone from 15,500 meals a month to 18,000 meals a month out of our community kitchen. our food pantry is open 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that's the gap that we fill. And we also have the first, and so far only that I know of its kind in rural America, a remote food locker program in the Bethel community. So
Interesting.
this came about when we were seeing carloads of people coming from the western part of Watauga. So western Watauga is that Bethel community is the highest food desert in Watauga County. They have, meaning they don't have access to anything fresh within 10 miles. So the people from Bethel and there's such poverty out there that they literally can only afford one tank of gas a month. And this is what I'm talking about, what people don't understand. They're like, you just need to do this, you need to do that. You need to talk to people and understand what their situation is.
Right.
So literally one tank of gas a month, they come, they do their doctor visits, they do whatever they need to do, and they would come to our pantry and our religion. They were loading up. Then we were starting to see people who were that weren't coming because they were scared of COVID.
Yeah.
So the people who were loading up everything, that food is not going to last a month. How many times you bought banana last a month? So we're like, we got to do things differently. We had heard about, after the hurricane in Houston from several years ago decimated, a company out of Italy manufactured these refrigerators and freezers that were food access locker. They were lockers. Mm-hmm. So we're like, okay. So we kicked that around a little bit. Then we got connected with a company out of Durham called Bell and Howell. They did the same thing in inner city Houston with the food pantry. And I'm like, okay. So we got busy during COVID because there wasn't enough to do. And we contacted this company and we worked with the Watauga County School System. We worked with Second Harvest Food Bank. We worked with some private donors. I'm leaving somebody out. Anyway, so we all got together when we raised $250,000 to do this project.
Okay, yeah.
And it is in the back behind the Bethel gym. I remember telling the guys at Bell and Howell, I'm like, so we're putting these next to a cow pasture. And they're like, ho. I'm like, no. They're going next to a cow pasture. So they were fantastic to work with because in Pittsburgh, it was like, okay, we're on the Wi-Fi network. We're going to do this. We'll scan the QR code, get your food. Mm-hmm. So if you can picture like the lockers at Harris Teeter that you walk in and they're there, you punch in your code, you get your food, you leave, right?
Yep.
So this thing had to be hardwired into the system at Bethel because there's no Wi-Fi out there.
It needed that amount of technology to operate.
Oh, yeah, because it's all remote.
Yeah. And when we're talking about Bethel, we're talking about the historic school that's out there?
Bethel School, Bethel Community, Bethel Baptist, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right on the Tennessee line. It's the furthest, it's 45 minutes from here to Bethel.
So, which we're talking about a facility that was built like early 1900s, something like that.
Maybe, yeah. And it is a very, very remote part of our county.
Yeah.
And has the highest poverty rate of our county. Mm-hmm. And so we did all this, and we said to them, this QR code thing's not going to work. They're like, what do you mean? Like, well, first of all, if they have it's a flip phone. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't even have a cell phone out there. So they rewrote the programming so people could just go and punch in their home phone number when it was their week. So how it works now is every Monday our local food coordinator calls, takes the orders from the families. So we're now doing 36 households out there. Some get a delivery on a Wednesday, some get a delivery on a Friday, and they get it every other week. So we take the order in person, that personal touch. Well, hey, Miss Mabel, how are you doing? What would you like to? Here's what we got. 90% of it comes from the food hub. We purchased it at full price to support local farmers.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, the food that's coming from the food hub, that's all local, organic, like the best stuff you can possibly get.
Stuff. Yeah. Homestead Creamery, the cheeses, the dairy, the eggs. And we're buying it from local farmers, and they're getting fresh, healthy food. That each week they get a frozen locker and a refrigerated locker, and they come in, they punch their number, and they go home with their food.
Yeah. I was going to say, too, like if they're out there and they need some kind of like Wi-Fi connection or even just a cellular signal just to get into the lockers, I mean, even if you do have a phone, like there's no guarantee you have a signal out there anyway. So,
right.
But that's pretty neat that they actually reprogrammed it so they could kind of work
They
around
worked
those
with
issues.
us to make it a success, and it is a huge success. And Feeding America has been gathering our data for the last 2 years about making this a pilot program and help other rural communities solve this issue. Yeah.
And that's a program y'all instituted around 2020, around the pandemic?
So 2021, and then we finally launched it in 2022.
Okay. So
and then in 2023, is when it doubled like that.
Okay.
And so we went from 1 day a week delivery to 2 days a week delivery.
Okay. And was that because there was an added need out there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Now, interestingly enough, after Helene, we lost 8 households that completely lost everything. They had to move. Mm-hmm. So we plugged them. We put it out there and said, hey, we have 8 spots. And then those were quickly filled up, either through referrals from the Project on Aging or from the school counselor.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to get into the Helene stuff. So I understand that because of the response that was created after, like you said, people lost their homes or were forced to move or to relocate. I understand that y'all also started, a new program to deal with hurricane victims specifically. Mm-hmm. What did that look like, and how is that kind of progressing? Because I understand that's a pretty recent thing.
Well, we're really grateful to 2 private foundations. Golden Leaf was the first to approach us, and then State and Post Credit Union Foundation. So Golden Leaf gave us a little over $100,000, and State and Post Credit Union gave us $200,000, specifically for disaster housing recovery support. And so we are using that money, and we're able to use that money in different ways. So right now, we're paying for people to stay in hotels until we find them housing. Mm-hmm. We are helping a guy buy a camper to put on land that he lost everything down here at Bradford. And again, perfect example, guy knew us, been around us, freaked out by Helene, didn't know what to do, had been going back and forth to Gastonia and live with family. And it's like, I just didn't know what to do. And he came in literally the day of the deadline of applying for FEMA. We're like, we need to apply for FEMA, but we can help you. Oh, so it's still, there are so many people like that that still don't know. They think, and so like when the FEMA vouchers run out in May, Memorial Day, we're able to pick up the slack and continue to pay for people's hotel. We were paying for a family of 10 until we got them housed. So again, it's our coordinators. So in this instance, it's our disaster housing navigator, Tom, and then if it's a family, he'll bring Olivia with him, our family housing coordinator, and we'll work together to see, okay, we're going to use some of the family housing money to do this, we'll use some of the disaster housing money to do this. So we're currently working with 20 households related to disaster.
So that's the current scope of that specific program, are those 20 households?
Yes. Yeah.
And these are people, like you said, they got moved into the hotels, which I think at one point, and they still be going on, that FEMA was helping pay for.
Yeah, and the FEMA vouchers run out on Memorial Day.
On Memorial Day?
Yeah.
Okay.
For everybody.
Okay.
And
so the hotels, and also I know people were donating campers.
Right.
Looking for places to put them. I wanted to ask you too, when the organization identifies housing for a family to move into, what does that look like specifically? Are y'all looking at, I don't know, just things on Facebook Marketplace? I was going to say Craigslist, but Craigslist isn't a thing anymore. Or just other,
unless you want to get scammed.
Some of the sites where people are just kind of looking for tenants.
Our coordinators look everywhere. Okay. We have alerts set up. They look at every option.
They're common things.
We have a list of landlords that we deal with regularly.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why Wilkes landlords are more willing to work with us. Mm-hmm. And Watauga landlords are wanting that bougie money.
Yeah.
And so they're more willing to. So let's say we get a family, we get someone like, okay, but they're going to go on a housing voucher. We will do a HUD inspection to make sure there's no broken rails, no broken windows, no basic stuff like that, and then we're able to move them in.
Okay. On that note, how's the camera doing?
We got 2 minutes. So
Okay, it's going to restart it. Yeah. I'll check this one real fast.
Yep.
It always freaks me out. So like I'll be sitting here like listening to you, and I'm like in the back of my mind like, did I press that button? Yeah. And then speaking of the housing vouchers, when they get actually moved into housing, I think at one point I was talking to someone. They were telling me about some of the HUD financial assistance that is available. Are these people then directed to some of those programs like that to continue to receive housing assistance, or is it just kind of back to just having a job and working to pay those bills?
It depends on the
Social
voucher.
Security? Okay.
So a voucher can pay anywhere from 30% to the full thing, depending on. But we're very set on with what the federal minimum is. So and it's different by county. So that, in Watauga County, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but like a 1-bedroom, a voucher is worth $1,100. So if we can get somebody a voucher of $1,100, they can pay the other $500, great. But if someone with very little income, not receiving any benefits, then that might not work for them.
Okay.
But like in Ashe County, is ridiculous. The fair market rent that we're able to give for a voucher for a 1-bedroom is $700. Please show me where the $700 1-bedroom in Ashe County for rent that will pass a HUD inspection.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where I give it up to our coordinators who are busting it. And the fact that we moved 247 people out of homelessness into their own homes last year, amazing.
Yeah. I was trying to think if I had another hurricane-related question for you, but I know you mentioned 20 families, which I think in January when I talked to you, I think you were saying it was about 40 or 50
individuals.
Individuals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
20 families. Okay.
So we got 20 households, and the unique thing about this is we're getting into spring and summer. The hurricane, we're getting back together. Everything's pulling together. One of the interesting things about all the long-term recovery groups in each county is everyone's focused on rebuilding and I've lost my house. No one's talking about the renters who is dependent on the landlord. Are you going to rebuild or are you not going to rebuild? I mean, we lost 4 units ourselves and that we were renting and had to move them to other counties.
And were those units that the hospitality house had built themselves?
No, we were renting them, for a permanent, for our scattered housing program.
Okay.
And both of these, 2 of the people were elderly. They both traumatic. I mean, one lady was on the top of her building at Boondocks going, "Miss Tina, I'm going to die. I don't know how to swim." The other gentleman had to be rescued by boat out off 105 bypass. And and so there's a lot of trauma related to that too. But they're both in Watauga now. They're living in Wilkes.
Okay.
We had 2 units in Wilkes that actually we lost, and we've got them in hotel rooms right now. So it's crazy.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's still some people like in that kind of limbo situation.
Well, like the guy I mentioned before that he just fled to Gastonia. And there are people now who've been living with family. We got it happen last week. Oh, can't stay there anymore. Got to find a place to live. They were just wiped out by the hurricane.
Yeah.
And trying to make it. We're going to survive. But then it's like, okay, you got to find another place. And so people think the immediate aftermath, they got to get people housed. Well, here we are 6.5 months into it. There are still people realizing they need help because they lost their housing during the hurricane. They found a temporary thing, but they have no plan for a long term. And that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And then if something happens while they're in that temporary thing, then all of a sudden you have to find another temporary housing, I guess, or you have to really start looking seriously at that long-term option.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, temporary housing, you go and live with a family member, that thing will last forever usually. So it's like, I want my couch back.
Right. Yeah. You back on your feet. Yeah.
Yeah, I need my couch back. You got to go.
Yeah. Let's talk about funding for a
Okay.
little bit. I'd like to hear, just as kind of just for our class purposes, how a nonprofit like this typically receives funding. I'd also like to hear a little bit about maybe what you guys are facing in the face of a lot of these federal spending cuts and a lot of these grant pauses. Because I would think that y'all probably rely pretty heavily on a lot of maybe federal and state grants to operate and to do the kind of work that you do.
A lot of our programs are based on federal programs, permanent supportive housing, domestic violence transitional housing, rapid rehousing. Those are all federal terms, and those are all programs we operate with federal funds. Now, typically the federal funding does not meet the full need, so we fundraise on top of that. Several years ago, we really started to purposely diversify our portfolio. So of a 3.89, almost $4 million budget last year, 600,000 was federal or state funds.
Okay, so that small of a percentage was actual federal state funds.
Right.
Okay.
To this day, still the single biggest funder of our organization are individuals.
Okay.
It's still the biggest funder, except the years of COVID when we were getting all that money. So, we bought this building with COVID money, so they gave us $1 million to buy this building. So, accepting those years, there's several layers to this question. So, let's just say a hospitality house loses that $600,000 that was going to a variety of different programs. Okay, so let's say that goes away. Right now it's on hold still. We don't know what's going to happen. It's about $617,000. We were awarded that on January 17th.
Of this year?
Of 2025.
2025.
And then we were locked out of HUD. We never got our contracts. We never got anything. Once the inauguration happened, we were just kind of blocked out. Then suddenly the HUD website went down. Our credentials were invalid. We were locked out. We couldn't access anything. We couldn't even access the money from the year previously that we'd already been awarded, had a contract that we were trying to draw down. So the way federal money works, you have to spend it to get it.
Yeah.
You might have awarded this, but you have to go into the system and you have to get your reimbursement. So we had stuff from the last fiscal year that we were trying to pay on, and we got locked out of the system immediately. We still cannot access that money that we already have signed contracts for. So that's one issue of the money we should already be being able to touch. And then there's the other issue: are they going to send us contracts to sign for this $600,000, or are they not?
Yeah.
So because we diversified and because we really did a good job with COVID funding, and we are good for the next year, even if we don't get that $600,000. Beyond that, we'll have to make some changes. Now, that's one piece. That's the hospitality house piece. Let's say that the Housing Choice Voucher Program gets significantly altered.
That y'all receive through HUD.
So we don't receive those.
No.
Those come from Northwestern Regional Housing Authority. They're our biggest housing partner.
Okay. Yeah.
So Northwestern Regional Housing Authority, there are 2,222 vouchers currently in circulation in our 7-county region. Okay, doing the Todd math that I did based on the average, that is somewhere between $32 and $36 million of revenue that is coming into our 7 counties every year. Of those 2,222, our clients access about 10% of those. So, which would leave us, and how that works is, let's say we have this opioid money, we have this Day One Families Fund money, it's great. we're housing people like crazy. 85% of people that we house, once we pay all their deposits to this, and then after the 2 to 3 months, they go on a voucher to pay the rent for in perpetuity or whatever. If that goes away, to that 600,000, we would need to add, just in dollar to dollar, 3.2 to 3.6 million on top of that, which should effectively double our budget. Now, that is if we're still playing in the same lane of fair market rent. But we wouldn't be. We would have to compete on the open market for housing, which would then mean that 3.2 to 3.6 would jump up somewhere to 4.8 to 5.2.
Because again, y'all would be filling in those gaps that are...
We would have to raise that money that housing vouchers normally fill. So we would be looking to go from a $4 million budget to a $10 million budget. And there's not enough money out there to do that.
Yeah.
So we will have to look at significant changes.
Yeah. So long story short, of those federal funds, these different government agencies actually operating as they should is a big reason why you guys can do what you're currently doing and helping almost 300 people into housing and out of homelessness over that past
right.
Past year.
And since 2020, that number is over 800 people that we have moved out of homelessness since 2020.
Yeah.
85% of them are on vouchers. If that system goes away or significantly underfunded or defaulted, and we've met with the heads of the grant funding. They have their own organization, and they said, look, we're doing our best to fill in while we can. But please understand, if all of this happens, the state of North Carolina will lose trillions of dollars, and there's not enough foundations to fill that. So we're just trying to plug in right now. They said we're all feeling the same pain.
Yeah.
That we're looking at trillions of dollars. And you got to think about that too. Foundations run on investments, which are invested in the stock market.
Yeah.
So there's just, I can't, I've never experienced this amount of, I thought COVID was bad. This is worse.
Yeah. So COVID, hurricanes, and then the administration.
This is the worst because I spend so much of my time. We have an emergency call right now. I got to get on a state call. I got to get on a federal call. Like, that's my job right now.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be raising money. My job is answering to legislative issues and emergency issues. And it's exhausting.
So it sounds like a lot of part of the issue you came across is when you get locked out of these systems or you don't know if you're going to get reimbursed for the money that...
And they don't tell us anything.
Yeah, guaranteed to you.
Right.
You're probably calling these people and saying, hey, let's try to clear up some of the confusion here. And probably the response you're getting is that these agency heads or people you talk to are also like, we don't know either.
Well, we operate, it's the Greensboro field office is our HUD regional office. And we know these people, like, personally.
Yeah.
Like, our rep, she was one of the first people to call us after the hurricane. Are y'all okay? It's not a bureaucrat over there. This is someone who lives in Greensboro, who lives in our state, who knows us and loves us, and like, I love coming to the mountains and do your audit. Oh, we have so much fun. So these are people who these are people.
Right.
And she's like, I'll do my best, but we don't know what's going on either. I'm just lucky to have a job. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So is this the situation was there any confusion that got cleared up from January to February and into March? Or is it still a situation?
It's still a shit show, man. There's no clearing up. Like, 1 week it was like, okay, we're back up. 48 hours later, gone again.
Yeah.
But there's no communication from DC about that. Okay. I have to read about it in a press release or something. Like, they just did a massive overhaul of the HUD website. The links don't work. All of our previous guidance on contracts has been deleted. So luckily there are people in each of the programs that are, or each of the departments that are archiving everything like crazy. Like, I know someone who was on the DHS website. Like, we're copying everything, we're downloading everything. So there are private citizens doing this to keep copies, because basically, in effect, we will be, if we ever get our money, we will have to follow guidelines that they're no longer published, that they've deleted. And we're supposed to know what they are.
Yeah. But isn't that so much more efficient? I mean...
Yeah, right. And this is why I think they're doing it on purpose, because they want to punish us. Anyway, one of the big red flags. So I was at the CDBG disaster recovery meeting at the High Country Council of Governments with the North Carolina Department of Commerce and the governor's team about this $1.9 billion that's coming in for disaster recovery. It was a listening session. There were different local leaders there. Well, after this listening session and these different ones, suddenly we Hospitality House, were being required to put on our weekly reports, which you've never had to do weekly reports before, to how many private foundation dollars you've received for disaster recovery. The government is asking us how much private foundation dollars we received for disaster recovery. What does that tell you? They're trying to weasel out of giving us disaster recovery money from HUD. Because that CDBG money, while it will be state issued, has to come from the federal government. And we're like, if they make us start telling the foundations, we're balking. Because right now we just have to report the total. But if they start like, well, who is it that's giving you this money? Not going there.
Yep. And that could probably be a situation because like some of the nonprofits, they really rely on those relationships they build with those donors.
Right. I don't want to put a bullseye on St. Louis Credit Union or Gold Leaf Foundation or those people who are our partners.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like it's gotten any better since it all began. Are you...
It's worse.
Okay. Yeah.
I would love for it to be better so much. I want it to be better really, 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 really bad, but it's not.
Okay. Well, kind of how do y'all go forward from that? Like, is it just...
It's funny you say that. I just came out of a finance committee meeting, and it's coming up on budget time. We're going to need to prepare like 4 different budgets.
Wow.
And here's as if we were operating as usual, if this happens, we move to this. If this happens, we move to this. If this happens, we move to this. So no extra work involved. At all. We're trying to help people experiencing homelessness. I would love to not be doing what I'm doing right now.
Well, and that's a big thing, too, because it's kind of any organization I talk to, whether it's the university or different people, when it comes kind of down to that kind of thing, they all have the same thing to say. It's like, we wish we could be doing less paperwork, less reporting, less of this, kind of internal bureaucratic and office manager stuff, and going back to like what you were saying earlier, and dealing with the people one-on-one and actually getting the work done that needs to be done.
Well, I have a good friend that's another nonprofit that West Union Network, they're going to lose $600,000 too.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of St. Louis Credit Union. It's the most uncomplicated. They contacted us. We didn't have power here. We were operating on construction lighting and a generator. I mean, just write us a paragraph, write us something and tell us what you need. Yeah. That was it. They're like, okay, $200,000. Talk about unencumbered. And then they brought their team up here yesterday, half of them from Raleigh, and worked all day sorting disaster supplies and emptying containers and stuff like that. Those are community partners.
Now, let's say worst case scenario, things don't improve. How does that affect the people on the ground? How does that affect the people that you guys work to help?
Ultimately, homelessness will explode again because we'll have to cut programs and cut staff, and we won't be able to house people from a tent anymore. I can't even go there really because it makes me sick to my stomach. Yeah. Especially sitting here on the best year we've ever had. As far as housing people, we're the best year ever. And it's like, don't you see what we're doing over here?
Right.
It's really great. Yeah. And we're making positive change. And that's what's so frustrating.
And that's kind of one of the things, I guess, you kind of learn how the world works. And, you can kind of do the best you can with a lot of things, and do you expect to be recognized, or?
I just don't. I just want people to
right,
leave us the hell alone.
Yeah.
And see what we're doing, good work.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just kind of getting it from all sides right now.
Yeah.
Even at the state level, they're pushing anti-homeless bills that would criminalize me with a Class H felony.
In what way?
If I knew that someone was doing drugs on our property, they would arrest me. Not even on our property, 300 feet around your property.
Mm.
It's not even just in your, that's HB 147. I don't know, there's 3 that we're fighting right now.
Well, I imagine, like, if you're one of these addiction recovery places, I mean, these are the people you're trying to help. And
right.
Like, inevitably, you're going to have some instance where
we're trying to loop homeless shelters into the same category as a daycare and a school.
Yeah.
Hello.
I've been in schools where people have been, doing that sort of
Right.
thing. But I mean,
Well, here's the thing: someone with more than I forget the terminology, 5 ounces, 0.5 ounces. I don't know how marijuana works. Automatic 15 years in prison.
Mm.
Over 5. If you have 6 or 7, automatic 15 years minimum in prison. Marijuana.
For marijuana.
In 2025.
Something that's pretty much like technically legal for the most part.
I'm like, is it marijuana I buy at the tobacco store or stuff I had to get that someone grew?
Yeah.
Can I get it at Naked Creek Pharmacy in West Jefferson, or does that count? So it's a lot. I'm sorry, my dog has an appointment at 4:30, so I just want to make sure.
What time is it?
Yeah.
4 o'clock. Okay.
I don't have far to go. I got to go to Deep Gap though.
I got you. We can wrap it up. I mean, I think we got most of what we needed for the class, and then I can send it to your communications folks as well, and then if they like it, we can see about maybe distributing it to some other folks and put it up online. And
Okay.
I don't know who'll see it, but
Hey,
you
we're
can't
always
help.
pushing it out, man.
Yeah.
We got to push it out the best we can. So, is
Doesn't
there
hurt to
anything
get the
else?
word out, or at least attempt.
No, we got to spread the
Have you-
word.
No.
Questions
We
or-
got more than enough, I think. Thank you so much, Todd.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Okay.
it. Yeah.
I think I.
How can people donate to the hospitality house? How can they volunteer? How can they help y'all out?
Hosphouse.org. Don't forget the P. Hosp. P is in Paul. House.org. People call it Hosp House. It's hosphouse.org. Right on the homepage, you can click Get Involved. You can volunteer. There's a donate button right there. You can donate. You can come. We still need people to come and cook meals. It's a great way for a class, a church group, a fraternity, a good team building exercise to come and cook a meal in the kitchen. You can come see us at the farmers market on Saturdays and donate.
Okay.
We have a donation station there on Saturdays. We share that space with Hunger Coalition, Farm Cafe, and Casting Bread, so we rotate. It's always good to come drop some money in the bucket, because then we spend that money with local farmers and bring the produce and food right back to our pantries. So it's another way that we support local farms and agriculture. And we're really trying to put a push on that to help them, because they're also trying to recover from a hurricane. So the more money that we collect at our donation station at the farmers market, the more we're helping out small farmers.
Well, my wish is that I've been doing more of these videos like this, doing more online stuff, is that people at some point in the future would watch this and want to benefit these organizations either financially, or if you're like me, you don't have any money and App State,
Right.
you give all your money to App State,
Right.
that you could go out and give some of your time, which in a lot of senses is much more valuable.
I will tell you, we have a monthly donor, and it moves me every time I see it. It comes through. She donates $3 a month, and it's $3.61 because she's also paying for the 61 cents that it costs to process a credit card.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just love it when it comes through. $3 a month, like that's what she can do, and she's doing it. She's been doing it for 2 years. So everything counts. Everything matters.
Yes. All right, Mr. Todd, well,
Hey,
thanks so much for your time.
it's good to see you. Nice to meet you. It was absolutely my pleasure.